Hello, and welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm Bill Hirschman, chief critic and founder of Florida Theater on Stage, and I will be your host today. Today, we'll be interviewing one very busy person. But before we meet her, let's meet our panel for today. Karen Stevens is an award-winning actress performing all over South Florida. Sherry Uppen is a producer and director for a variety of shows here in South Florida. Andy Rogo is the artistic director for Island City Stage. But our guest today can be seen performing all across the world. But we see her most often as Palm Beach Drama Works. She has been in various national tours, performing everything from Shakespeare to Hello, Dolly. You've seen her here before as a panelist, but today she's our special guest. And her name is Margery Lowe. And thank you for being here today, Margery.
This is so much fun, but it's very strange being in the middle. I'm used to being on one side or the other. So
well, you've got an extremely large audience, so just don't get nervous. One of the things that's interesting is that if you look at your resume, or we look at your resume, it is extremely long and detailed and varied. What advice do you give other theater artists for how to keep a career going that long? I mean, obviously there's talent and skill, that goes without saying, but you've got an extremely busy resume. How have you managed to do that? What are the challenges that are involved?
I think the advice I would give actors starting out or what has served me the most across the genres is having a strong technique as a foundation. I always tell actors to study. Now that's not something that you maybe rely on all the time. You don't want to be a technical actor. But without having that underneath you, I don't know that I could have crossed over into musicals and theater and film and television and all of those different genres without having that foundation.
So how did you obtain your technique?
Acting is something I've always done. You know, some people come into it later in life. I was one of those kids that was singing and dancing on the table. In fact, my mom passed away a couple of years ago, and I found in a box a cassette tape, which says my age, but of me at 5 years old singing "I Get No Kick from Cocaine," not having a clue what I was singing about, but you know, it was just something I've always done.
Were you a child performer? Did you perform professionally?
Not professionally. In school, it's just always been like breathing. And I know, you know, for certain actors, probably you as well, it's so a part of who you are. It was never a decision. I just knew that this was something I was going to do. And I went to school for theater.
Where?
In Virginia, at Shenandoah University and Conservatory of Music. And here I was from Long Island, and I met my husband there from Saskatchewan, Canada, Clive Challerton, and had a great, great teacher there who really, he's since gone, but Harold Herman was our professor, and he had studied with Uta Hagen, and he really, really instilled a foundation of technique again. He used to do something called scoring. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, tell us about that.
Yeah, and it's basically taking your character, and you're charting it out, and I'll teach it to young actors when I teach. And you would write your character name and a description, and it's putting into columns your units, your overall intention, your actions for each line, your obstacle, and really it was great at the time because it really got you to not just learn the technique, but really forces you to think through it for the whole scene and then overall in.
Do you still do that?
I don't use the scoring anymore as much, although I do find if I'm stuck, it's a great thing to go back to. No, now I'm a big journalist. And I like to use a journal. And that's how I'll start a show, with just writing. I stole that I did a stand-in day on a film called First Do No Harm, And the reason why I took it is because they told me it was with Meryl Streep. And I was like, I'm there. How much do I pay you? I'm going. And you could totally see that she had a background in theater. She was from this discipline. She would start her scenes when they would say quiet on the set. Even when they were saying speed, she would do her backstory into the scene so that when action hit, she started right into the scene.
See.
And when they said cut, when the director said cut, she would, if it wasn't a button, she would keep going. And she was a journalist. Everything was in her journal. She had all her intentions, everything written out.
When I look at you and read your resume, I keep thinking the word career. In other words, not just a single show, but a career. When you were first starting out, what was the toughest part about starting out? Again, people watching going, you know, I'm thinking about doing this, but I don't know, should I go to New York? What was the hardest part in the first few years?
You know, when I started out, we moved to, my husband and I, like I said, we met in college, and then we moved to New York. And the biggest challenge at that point was finding an agent and really getting representation. And I think it probably still is. We didn't have the access of websites. You know, we were still sitting there sending out postcards from your Ross report, and right? You remember those days? Yeah, and it's just the acting part is the easy part. That's the fun. It's the business end that I would say is the most challenging. You know, we moved to South Florida. We started a family, and it's been wonderful. My son now is a senior in high school. So it's opening up all these new opportunities. I've kind of stuck to home, but now I hope to spread my wings a little bit. But boy, that business end has changed. We were just talking about it in the green room. And
is he in the business, your son?
oh my God, no.
Okay.
Absolutely not. He comes to the theater and he just wants to go into the tech booth. He wants to go into political science. So that's his version of theater. But
it is theater.
it's definitely theater. Yeah. So he has his own version of expressing himself.
So Margery, go back to New York a little bit
Yeah.
and talk about your experience. Like, what was the first professional job you got? How did that lead to other gigs?
Well, when I was there, and it still is, the first thing you want to do is get your union card. Now that's a little different here in South Florida, although I'm on the liaison committee, and we're hoping to change that way of thinking. But you really weren't considered a professional unless
How
you
did you get your union card?
I got my union card from Joey Patton. Shout out to Joey Patton. If everybody knows him from the Carousel Dinner Theater.
Ohio.
Remember him with his dog in his purse? He used to direct with his dog all the time. And we're friends on Facebook now. But yeah, he gave me my union card, and the rest was history. The auditions were the easy part. You know, it's sort of cliche, but if you think about it as 2 minutes of your chance to perform and take that intensity of having to get that job off, and just, you know, it's not, we say that, we don't always do it,
Right.
but yeah, that's the fun part. It's following up. It's I think that what gives you longevity in this career is being someone that people like to work with. And I'm sure you say this as an artistic director. I've had conversations and as a director with directors, and they'll say, you know, I'll take if I have two people and one's a little more talented and one is, they're good, but maybe they're not my first choice, I'll take that second person if I know they're going to be collaborative and they're going to be prepared and bring in ideas, but also listen.
Relationships.
Absolutely.
Very important,
and then you get hired back. And that's the goal, you know. As a kid, we all wanted to be the star. And hey, if they're handing it to us, we're going to take it, right? You get a TV show, I'm not going to turn it down. But you start realizing that what you just want to act. You love it. You're passionate about it. You want to tell good stories, and that's the career that you want. So maybe what you dream of as a 10-year-old becomes something different, but I think it becomes more enriched.
How does it work when you met your husband and
Yeah.
he was an actor as well?
He was an actor, and we were both.
How did that work with both of you
It
and
was,
then into the marriage?
It was great, and it still is. He changed careers, and he still directs, and he's actually coming back to actor with an actress named Karen Stevens. Soon, he's going to be doing American Son for Zoetic. He's a wonderful actor, but it's been wonderful because he's so supportive. So he understands the business. So when I said I'm going on tour, he got it. And vice versa. I could support him and sort of, make sure the home fires were burning. And we juggle a lot, but we wanted to have a family, and that's how we ended up in South Florida.
I was just going to ask that. So, what
was going to ask
precipitated the decision? Obviously, you were getting work in New York.
Yes.
And why South Florida?
Well, it was sort of a happy accident and one of the greatest accidents that's ever happened. This is home, and this is my family, and you guys are all part of it. But we were working in New York, and knock on wood, things were going very well. And that's I got cast at the Stratford Shakespeare Festival up in Canada, which was an opportunity of a lifetime. And so while I was there, Clive was working in Toronto doing a lot of film. And then we had discussed having a family, and he changed careers altogether. He went into financing. And he said he got a job in South Florida and said, we're going to move to South Florida. And I said, we're doing what? I had no clue. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if there would be Union Theater, if there would be community theater, anything. And so we literally just picked a spot on the map, came on down. I had auditioned before I got here and got cast at Florida Shakespeare Theater, which is now Gable Stage, in Othello, and came down, and the rest has been history. It's been the happiest move that we've ever made. Yeah, it's been really wonderful.
We're very lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you.
You spoke about juggling.
Yeah.
Now, what about trapeze?
Oh my God. You've been reading my resume.
I've heard there was a rumor.
I have special skills. I know how to swing out on the trapeze. I know how to do a catch, turn around, and catch back. And that's my
When did you
trapeze
do
skills.
that? Were you in the circus?
No, I was at Club Med. But I found out I had a skill for it. So now that's my special skill.
Do you practice?
No, but I get a lot of directors that ask, if you're sitting around waiting for sides or something, it's a great little discussion piece. They'll say, what is this trapeze skills? So that's another trick that I would tell actors, have really fun things on your special skills because you never know.
And be able to really do them.
And be able to do them. Right, exactly.
There's an in-house joke there. So.
So, besides your son, in such a long career, what do you consider your greatest triumph?
Wow, that's a tough question. You'll get asked what your favorite role is, and I have a hard time with that question because it's like asking who your favorite child is.
Right.
More recently, I guess I have to go to Picnic, because
Which won you a Carbonell.
It did. So it had such a beautiful ending. And I won't lie, that was a great, I loved getting my award. It's exciting and wonderful. Yeah, for sure. You love that recognition. But that was a real challenge. That was a show that Bill Hayes called me and said, I want to do this show. And I'd heard of it. But the role I played, Rosemary, had evolved into being cast very differently. A different body type, a different age range. It wasn't originally, but it had sort of developed into something I thought, I'm not right for this. And that was a lesson unto itself. And he said, no, I'm reinventing this. I have a different way to look at it. I see Rosemary as an older Madge, which is the main character. I see her as someone that was defiant and chose not to get married. And he had a different concept for it. So I was a little hesitant. And I jumped in, and boy, did I learn some of the biggest challenges have the biggest rewards.
In 2001, I went to the O'Neill Center in their Critics Institute, but also got to hang out for a solid month with directors and actors and playwrights. And it was an education to hear for the first time in my career actors and directors and playwrights talk about their own work and work they had with other people. At which point I discovered there's no one more critical of other people's work, let alone their own, than other theatrical artists. So I'm going to ask you a really tough question. Is there a part that you've done that you went, I never quite got that. I would love to do it again because I just never nailed it the way I had hoped to?
Right. I'm going to give you the honest answer. All of them, and then none of them. You know, they're all, you all say, oh, I would go back, if I went back, I would do this differently, or I would do this differently. But that at the same time, they're so true to where you were at that moment. That was, and you bring yourself to these roles, you know, I'm not a queen, but I'm going to bring Margery to playing a queen, or you have to find yourself within them. And that's where your headspace was at that time. So hopefully they're representations of who you were and they're honest at that moment.
You're very fortunate. You have a great look, and it doesn't seem like you would necessarily be typecast in anything. I think you could do you find that?
Well, I'd like to cover all the genres and styles, you know. I'd like to do comedy and
Anything on your bucket list?
Yeah.
again, I'm going back to the lame answer, but all of them. I do have some roles. I mean, I want to do the Medeas and the Mother Courage, and I want to do the Chekhovs and all the great stories. That's the joy of theater, is getting to speak these words, and I have to say I have a special place in my heart for the classical theater. You know, getting to do Edward Albee's and Shaw's. And
Are you tempted to ask your husband to find something for you?
every day? What have you done for me lately? Yeah, you know, but then at the same time you want to do new works. There's some really exciting new writers. A couple of years ago I got to do a play with Joe Adler down at Gable Stage called If I Forget. And it was by a writer, Stephen Levinson, who wrote Dear Evan Hansen, but he's still up and coming. And I remember reading that script and thinking, this author has a point of view. It's 90 minutes, 4 people in one set is great, but not every show has to be done that way. And to hear someone that really had a story to be told, that's exciting too. So again, it goes back to storytelling. You just, whether it's a big role or a small role, you just want to be part of a great story.
Well, some South Florida directors and artistic directors who have 2 weeks and 3 days to put up a show will often cast actors in roles that they know that they can do. Are there roles that you would love to do that you don't think anybody would ever think of Margery for?
There you go. That's a great question.
I answered it. Mother Courage. That one is the first one that comes to mind. You know, as you get older, I think people talk about female roles getting limited, but I'm hoping it'll expand. I'm 5'2", and I'm you know, a tiny frame. So for a while, like Hello Dolly, I can't tell you the amount of minifays I've played. And regarding Shakespeare, I was doing Hermia a lot, which was terrific. But I think that the size matters less. And so I'm looking forward to the amount of roles being expanded, and that you get less trapped. I mean, Helen Hayes she's a little lady.
Do you have this opportunity, though, in South Florida? How does that work for you as far as theaters are concerned?
I think so. You know, so many have come and gone. And we've lost some great ones. We lost Florida Stage and we lost the Caldwell, but I think they're being replaced. You know, it keeps reinventing itself. You know, there's New City Players, right? I didn't get to see it, but I heard there was quite a lovely production of
The Scottish play.
Of the Scottish play that they just did, and how exciting is that they're doing Shakespeare? You know, we don't see that a lot.
And
here.
Raisin in the Sun and other
And
things
Raisin
they've
in
done.
the Sun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as long as those great stories are being written, I think that this is a thriving community.
Okay,
And
so now let's get gossipy because
All
you
right.
said you did the tour of Hello Dolly, and
Yeah.
who did you do that with?
I did that with the great Madeline Kahn.
So how was that?
She was
I want to hear stories.
amazing. It was so much fun. It was directed by Leroy Reams, who was a hoot, of course.
Yeah.
He's a blast. And you know what? That was a learning experience because here was a woman who I knew and worshipped, and she entered that role, even though it was a musical, she was an actress first. And she approached all of the script, every moment, as an actor. And a musician second. So when Dolly breaks the fourth wall and has to wave to the audience, she really envisioned them. She would give them backstory in her mind, she said, of all the characters, or she was talking to Ephraim. Everything had to be justified. But the best memories I have of that tour are her warm-up at about 15, our 15 call. She would call myself and the woman playing Irene Malloy, and we'd go in, and she was a B-52s fan. And every single night we would just rock out to Rock Lobster or Love Shack and had a blast. So she was a lovely, down-to-earth woman that was really brought her acting skills to that role. Yeah, it was so much fun.
What do you consider your biggest challenge to date as being an actress?
I would say the biggest challenge is to just keep going. You know, you were asking about getting typecast, and I think the challenge of a small community is that you do get known in certain roles. And sometimes there is a great gift in anonymity. You know, we see them bring in someone from maybe New York or somewhere else that they don't know simply because it's a fresh face. And so you want to remind some of the artistic directors here that you can do other things that maybe they've seen you do.
Are you proactive in your career? Do you make calls?
I do.
To any directors?
I'm writing on those emails and I'm calling.
I think that
Yeah.
this maybe you can elaborate a little bit for those people who young actors who watch the show and might want to have some hints on how to stay fresh and passionate as you are in your career.
I think I would say besides being proactive, you're your own agent. You know, you have to be on top of it. Is being gracious. I've found that just the simplest thing of saying thank you after an audition. Now you have the luxury of dropping an email, you know, as opposed to write. But I think writing a handwritten note, and saying thank you for the audition, doing your work, keeping in touch, following up. Those are things that I think, you know, you forget that we're all human. You know, when you're younger, you're like, oh, this is the director, but we're all in the same storytelling genre, and we're all in the same family.
I think that's a point now that we know emails. Because years ago we didn't know emails, and how would you get to the direct? That's
you don't want to
very
bombard
nice.
them. And again, don't lie.
Yeah.
Don't lie. Don't say, I don't do the emails. I know there are some actors that do of, I'm booked, so I need to know right away. If you're not booked, I wouldn't do it.
We're in the home stretch, so I do want to ask, you have a long history here, and you've seen the place evolve. Where does this community need to go? What is the hole in it that you'd like to see addressed?
I think I would like to see a lot of the theaters, which they do, but I'd like to see more of it, really nurture their actors, their local actors, long term.
In what way?
Like a Steppenwolf. You know, trust. I know it's easy to bring in actors, and there are roles that can't be cast locally. But I'd like to see the continuation of trusting and nurturing the family here.
And how? And what? By example? readings?
How do I elaborate on that?
Well,
Karen?
I
Help me
think
out.
that the challenge with that
Yeah.
is partly that, when you're in New York, there's always somewhere to be taking class, and most professionals do continue to take class.
Right.
But here, that doesn't exist. There's nowhere for
Right.
professionals like you to keep going and taking class and workshopping. And any time that somebody's tried to set up something, it never lasts.
I would love to see that evolved, and I'll just tag on. I know we're at the end, but
You're fine.
one of the biggest lessons I learned when I was working at Stratford, I was working with some great actors. They're brilliant. You're working with the Brian Bedfords and Christopher Plummer and Maggie Smith, and some of those English actors, they can drink. They're out at the pub 2 a.m. But Stratford offered classes in folio work, Shakespeare folio work, anything from or Feldenkrais, voice technique, to tap class. And I had tap class with Christopher Plummer.
Wow.
Or I would do folio work with Brian Bedford, who had it memorized. He didn't, but it was a mindset of continuing
And you
education.
think that this is we could establish something like that
I would
here?
love it. I would love it. I know Peter Gelman's trying to do that a little bit, but I think that would really grow the community.
Excellent idea.
But real quickly, though, I just wanted to say that Ken Kay does do acting workshop
And
at
Beth
Drama Works.
Diamond.
Beth Diamond, Michael Leeds, Jane Kelly, Mark Durso. So there are a few people in the community, some resources for people who want to take acting.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we could do this another half hour.
Yeah.
Hell, another 2 hours. Anyway, I'd like to thank Margery so much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to announce we must bring the show to a close. I want to thank our panelists for being here today, and especially Margery for taking time out of her busy schedule to be here. Spotlight on the Arts is a community program, so we invite you to participate. Drop us a line. Let us know how we're doing. You can email us at spotlightonthearts@browardschools.com. And while you're on the computer, make sure you check out our favorite websites, which are floridatheateronstage.com and beacon.tv. Please make sure you tune in next week for another episode of Spotlight on the Arts. And as the creator of this show, Iris Acker, would always say, go to the theater!